Within the realm of Oblivion, you're able to utilize a bunch of different weapons, from the classic short sword to the bow to most traditional weaponry in between. However, for joke weapons akin to the fork and torch in Skyrim, there really aren't many options, except for one. There was one weapon that was exclusive to a plugin in the original, whose existence is for one big joke. I'm also a joke character who loves joke weapons. It is natural that I gravitate towards the inane, as today we will attempt to beat Oblivion Remastered with a hoe. Dear gods, I already know where this video is going. Okay, the hoe. We are talking about the gardening tool, not the tool fooling around with the sirens. It is a weapon with mediocre stats with a horrible swing speed. In fact, it is classified as a warhammer, which is the slowest swinging weapon in the game, and this weapon has the lowest damage of the hammers. Yeah, you can tell how in over my head I am. There are actually a few different variants of the gardening utensils that are all identical, except the regular hoe is funny because this hoe, at least in the original, had the enchantment that transmits to whomever I hit one of several diseases. I'm just going to pause the preamble here. So for the rules of the run, the only weapon in my entourage is the hoe, and that is it. I will allow myself to use a rockbreaker hoe also, just this one is clean. I don't have any other rules since there really aren't many followers in Oblivion, and for glitches I'll allow myself the use of the Duke glitch because it's probably going to be patched out fairly soon anyways. Though real Oblivion fans keep the jank alive. So with all the rules and stuff out of the way, how many euphemisms can Orph make without getting demonetized? Let's find out. So starting with the character creator, going with the Stronghold Orc today. I actually did not know about the origins affecting your character's attributes, but in the remastered gender doesn't affect starting attributes, so the variations had to go somewhere. As for the character creation, I slide the sliders in one extreme to another, and dear god, I've created something I don't even think the most desperate person in the world would want to deal with. Even the cellmate across the way agrees with what happened to the orcs.
Ugly one.
I hop along the introduction as normal, jumping in earnest waiting for assassins to flirt with me, but instead they run past me. Once again, I am lonely with just my fist to book it out of the tutorial, since I cannot plow any fields in the intro, given there aren't any joke weapons in the tutorial barring the rusty stuff. I book it past everything and leveling up my acrobatics since I will need to jump. I run past the goblins that look less neckbeard than I do, and I'm reunited with Captain Kirk. As for my birth sign, I go with the warrior. A flat increase of the two attributes that encourage survival and offense sounds nice to me. The rest of the introduction is more me exercising jumping jacks while the blades carry my dumb Rs. Before long, Uriel informs me he is neck in line, and Boris lets me make my class, once again focusing on damage and survival, and from his skills just the essentials. As for my name, I'm just trying to trample the foes. And I spend the rest of the sewer dive running like most of my first states, and I plop a save before the grade, so if y'all are okay, I could probably resume this save to skip the introduction, since I can rebuild my character here. On to the fresh 2006 world, I have one main course of action, and that is getting my weapon of the day. For the most part, getting weapons should be pretty easy. Pop into a city or some hidden location, do a short quest, and I'm ready to do my run. As for getting my stick, it isn't too strenuous. All I have to do is go to a very remote location and explore a good chunk of the longest dungeon in the game with 23 different zones and a couple super bosses, all for a horrible weapon. You know, easy stuff. The journey to the watch really wasn't that interesting. Since I am level 1, there aren't any threatening creatures in the overworld, just dodging some wolves and the occasional very threatening mud crabs. And not just the riverside ones either. After 10 minutes of farming acrobatics experience, along with getting a weirdly bubbly particle effect after being in the water, I'm inside the fort. This is a soft dater quest, and it all starts off with a note in a sack. You know, the birthplace of the Creation Club. Then again, this place is basically Creation Club content if you think about it. I want this to be a quick in and out 20-minute excursion, and thankfully one of the soldiers here let me slide into third base, or wherever the momentum took me. After going through a ruined fort, I arrived in an underground town full of shacks, and the tunnels leading into a mine. In my honest opinion, I think Center Cliff Watch is the best dungeon in the game, and it isn't even close. It is like the only dungeon they actually put effort into designing, meanwhile every other dungeon looks the same. If you haven't played this dungeon, either in the original, get the Game of the Year edition, or the remastered, give it a go and have some fun. After running through the tunnels lost searching, I eventually find a light in a barrel, and protruding into it is a garden hoe. Off the bat, it isn't terrible. 5 damage when my rusty weapons do 1. I get to test it out on the totally laborers, especially if you don't put much effort into thinking about the fact these Dunmer are from Morrowind, specifically the Telvanni, and laborers are a very PG way to put things, with the situation around the Beastkin there. Morrowind only happened 6 years prior after all. Oh yeah, when I swing the hoe around, I can get Tickle Bridge. Yeah, my bridges would tickle. While cleaning out the room, I would swing my tool around, and when I'm wounded, I would hop the gap and wait a moment to heal. The AI in Oblivion are historically not on the bright side of things, so me when I'm trying to figure out where I put my car keys, and they would run away. Once I'm ready for round 2, I return to the fray and continue to call the numbers. And besides getting a case of the tunnel cough, the battles weren't too bad. These guys don't have much in the way of health, so a couple of power attacks are enough to clear out the crowd. I then do a probably not so smart play, and I level up. I don't want to level up very much because before long the enemy health totals will balloon out of control. Case in point, the next room when fighting the armorers, and they have a lot more health than their playmates, especially the Forge Master. He ain't a giant fire-breathing robot, but he sure hits like one. Had to play things safely, and eventually I could come out on top and get his very good gear, especially for this point in the game. I'll take the little benefits where I can. I also had some invisible soldiers try to come after me. They were yelling at me, yet they couldn't see me, and I couldn't see them. Once I went into the tent for a night, they came into play. They saw my face, and yeah, it wasn't a fun time for them. While I could clear out the rest of the dungeon, I don't really fancy fighting someone in Daedric attire with a horrible weapon, so I just book it out of there. The fight out wasn't too strenuous, just throwing some seeds into Dunmer skulls, and by playing things safe, I'm back out in the sunshine, ready for a night stroll. I traveled to the Imperial City for some cheese, mostly duping some healing potions so I can have it hotkeyed and selling for some money. Well, yeah, this could be a major glitch. I don't expect this glitch to be around for much longer. In fact, it was probably patched out between recording this run and upload, so I'll take my cheese when I can. Give Skyrim a break before I go back to turn that code into spaghetti. I do want to disclose, I only duped a handful of healing potions, nothing like powerful rings or stuff like that. While I might not have any bonus objectives as I'm still trying to get Oblivion data reinstalled in my brain, I figure I could do some field work, so I help out the Odile brothers retake their farms from the goblins. The defense of the farm wasn't that difficult, the only thing they have to worry about is me harvesting the fields. The goblins are still pretty weak, a good swing on the noggin is enough to cleave their skulls in two. I want to try to keep the brothers alive because they're not essential, but I'm not very concerned. The goblins are weak, and before long the crops have a fresh layer of compost for next year's crops. I return to the father and I get Children. Sure, it might not be as powerful as it is in Skyrim, but I will take it. I honestly forgot how Children was obtained in Oblivion. I thought it was certainly a lot more difficult. With my small mind satiated, I figure I should probably get the main story on track. I talk to Joffrey, and he wants me to pray to the gods for mercy. The gods should probably say sorry to every character created by this character generator, but oh well. I then traveled to Kvatch, was informed my ex is in town, and I took a nap to level up. I literally jumped a couple more times, and I get a level up again. I probably don't want to level up anymore for the rest of the run, since enemies will become damage sponges, but oh well. I run up the cliff, and find a gate to Oblivion just outside the doors, so I jump in head first without giving it a second thought. My first foray into hell wasn't that bad to start out with. I am only level 4, so all I have to deal with are the low-level scamps that go down in a couple of swings. It was May the 4th, so I had to pay a visit to a certain groundwalker. The outside portion wasn't that bad, whack away at the imposters, and looting the subscribe button, and before long I'm inside the tower. Just a few more imps at first, and then I realized my weapon really isn't that good in its current state, and the churls are taking a considerable more of a beating than I was anticipating. In terms of effectiveness, their 4-inch sticks are nothing to my foot-long rod, and I can outrange your attacks and come out on top. And you all need to get your minds out of the gutters. Inside the tower with the Sigil Keeper, I interrupt a pleasant encounter only lovers with a heavy build appreciation can experience. After enough swinging, the fields were plowed, and I'm back to bashing in the heads of demons. Yeah, even the unarmored churls are taking plenty of swings to go down. Eventually, I'm satisfied on blunt experience, and I pull the Doomstone out of the Doom pedestal, and I'm through the gate sending dinosaurs back to the Stone Age. I enter the church, which is conveniently the only building left standing because James Fallout said so. I talked to Martin and decided to save the city from the forces of evil, mostly this one guy working on his footwork. Inside the cellars, I witnessed what happens when you stick your hand into somewhere it isn't supposed to a little too far. You get stuck and condemned for all eternity. The route of the city wasn't that difficult, mostly because you're backed up with a legion of gamers playing on the only legit difficulty of very easy. Meanwhile, I'm a dumbass playing on normal like the fraud I am, or they're using way better weapons, who knows. Inside the dungeon nobody is supposed to know about, the scamps are no longer stunted, but that doesn't mean they're any easier to take down. I find the count face down after having to deal with stiff scamps for more than 4 hours. I grab the ring, and some captain took off his clothes in front of me. You're not supposed to do that in public. I called the cops, and I'm back at the priory, which is besieged by Mythic Dawn agents. They might be good at stealing wedding presents, but they aren't very good at the staying alive part. Well, the plot is set off, and now we must head to Cloud Ruler Temple. I decided to walk there while marking several locations on the map, things to do because I never realized until my last Oblivion run that the main story of the game can be completed in a really short amount of time. And I'm not talking about going through the back door of the Temple of the One. On my way to the north, I might have taken a slip on the mountain, but who's to say? I mostly wanted to mark Sacred Torna on the map, and I nearly got my ass handed to me by a skeleton guardian. This champ has taken his protein shakes and is ready to throw down. I am probably just bad, but all of his attacks seem to hit me just fine, meanwhile I missed most of my attacks. Or it just blocks because I swing slower than a drunk farmer who woke up after the crack of dawn in the middle of winter, ready to visit the liquor store and buy his daily dirty 30. I live in Iowa, this is more common than you think. After beating this hard bone man, I remembered I might have rabies from a wolf encounter, so I pray at a church and be freed from my diseases. Surprised the gods still accept me. At Anvil, I wanted to do the Siren's Quest before saying hell with it. I noticed that there was a shadow of a long stick on the ground. No, it was not a euphemism, it was just a shadow of my farm life on my back. Next distraction is visiting the cheat cave, where I clear out a conjurer on the road by way of the high ground. This elf must have been high on better stuff. I wandered into the cheat cave, though sadly the only decent thing that came out of this encounter is more blood to water my crops, along with a lot of Welkin stones for selling. With my distractions done, I warped to Cloudhaven Temple and watched a horse get pushed around. If I was in the horse's horseshoes, I would have just bucked and kicked Joffrey in the face. After getting myself very nauseous hopping around waiting for the dialogue to finish, I talked to my characters, and next up is getting information where the secret cult is. I also leveled up again against my better judgment because I wanted to do Namira's quest, but it would not work out. More on that later. I warped to the Imperial City and I beat the daylights out of the Mythic Dawn agent to see if I could skip parts of a quest. Sure, the innkeep might not be happy with me, but at least I skipped Fight Club. The guards were pretty chill with me, until they weren't.
Stop right there, criminal scum.
At the bookstore, I was hoping to ascertain copies of the hit novels involving an Argonian maid's adventures in spear polishing and bread making, but sadly they were fresh out, but at least I could get an evil book for my troubles. I tried waiting around to see if I could skip the sewers. I cannot, but Bara sure searched hard for me. I followed the Red Guard into the oversized sewers, and together we purged the city of its rats and mud crabs, but it was just me because Bara sure loves taking his time. The only thing I get for my efforts is a crash. Thankfully, this was the only crash I had this session. Thanks me paying $500 for a graphics card a week before I shot up to $800. Next go around the game was 100% more stable, but Boris really was not wanting to show up to the meeting, so I had to chase him back through the sewers, basically right where I left him, so I whacked him a few times to get him to chase after me. I just wanted to speed up the process so it wasn't the 5th era by the time we were done. I yielded before the meeting, and we attended the initiation, but since I have severe attention issues along with speech, right when Raven opens the door, I rush right on in. Yeah, Boros is definitely broke at this point, because he's just standing around doing nothing. I wasn't too concerned with Raven, weave back and forth in a rhythmic fashion, and you can beat enemies without too much fuss. Boros is still broken, so I leave him behind in the sewers to reboot his software, and I went through someone's basement. They were pretty confused about what was happening, but at least I could leave without worry. I then talked to my lizard friend, and had some issues trying to get the statue to work, partially because I'm bad at math, and I can't time my loads right. After a few days, I could finally get the location of the Mythic Dawn, and the walk to the destination wasn't very eventful, and before long I was failing at the concept of stealth. My intelligence stat is a flat 0 at this point, and also my hoe is starting to fall off, requiring several swings for the basic enemy to go down. I was afraid this would happen, but I did set one of my hoes on fire if need be. But for now, it is the basic hoe. One agent I hit in the head so hard she fell right on the fire. As for the big room with several boss level enemies, my battle plan was long thought out, full of intricate details with many points to fall back on should stealth fail, and oh wait, that was a different battle. This battle I just jumped in and hoped for the best. I did try to plot out the Cameron family tree with the whole immortality thing, and all I came up with was a bowl of ramen. The battle was pretty simple, all the acolytes were lighter from the blood loss, I forgot to wake up the lizard from his nap, so it is now a more permanent snooze, and now I can make my escape. Thankfully it wasn't too difficult, though most of the acolytes were fleeing and I was giving chase like a farmer who found out what that rustling was in the hay rafters. The agents weren't that threatening at this point. I started using more power attacks, and it was getting much better results. Speaking of results, the agents were just lining themselves up for the slaughter. One Stormguard I think was stuck in a state of life and unlife, and would not die. I cut my losses, and made my escape out of the tunnels. Back in Martin's winter retreat, I get my next task in snuffing out some spies, which are located at the Doomstone below the temple. Thankfully, the spy is outside the city limits, so no one will hear her cries for help. Once her body laid out cold, I got the message the other spy was dead. Must have become barefoot or something. Oh well, I got the plans, and returned to begin the next quest, hunting down a Daedric artifact. My original plan was to do Amira's quest, and she is the Prince of the Vial, which I certainly played the part. I brought some wine to lower my personality to match the chronically online, and while I was in Breville, I noticed a Daedric gate outside. So I said, why not? I could clear it out. Thankfully, it was one of the easier setups to clear. Just hop around the gate, and you're inside the tower. I just sprinted up the pillar, avoiding the devils that remind me of the Horned Demon and mascot from the Dungeon Keeper series, because I'm an old fart, and I decided to save scum the disco ball at the top, and I settled on being strong. Main reason I went to Breville was because I got lost. I totally confused Bruma for Breville. Anyways, Namira is just outside Bruma, like basically everything main story related. I just talked to the statue, and she wants me to cast a spell to make the zombies hungry for brains. I didn't really feel right given my weapon restriction, so I decided to cut my losses and commune with Azura instead. Instead of zombies, I get to write a hot story involving vampires that is its own genre. So many books in that genre. On my way to the gutted mine, I had a run-in with a timber wolf that took quite a few swings to take down, so yeah, off to a great start. And the first vampire in the den gave me phosphoric hemophilia, so things extra suck now. Yeah, my hoe ain't doing crap, so I brought out my hot hoe and the sunshine. I noticed at this point, I actually don't think I'm transmitting any diseases, so I'm going to need to enchant my regular hoe soon, especially since I got Ghost Boys coming up. Once the first vamp was tramped, I got my sickness cured and cured the rest of the cave. Thankfully, the rest wasn't nearly as bad as the first vampire. Once the last vampire was drained of its unlife essence, I decided to hop into the nearby Oblivion Gate, and as soon as I saw its layout, I bailed. Worst layout bar none. I returned to Zero's Shrine to get the best Daedric artifact that you should never give away to Martin, and then I returned to Cloud Ruler Temple and gave away a Zero Star to Martin because I don't plan on using this character again. Next up is closing another Oblivion Gate. You know, a totally safe excursion to paradise, sort of like when a mommy and a daddy and somebody mommy doesn't know about go on a wild weekend extravaganza. I went back to my basic code for this gate, and for the most part the dungeon dive wasn't too bad. I let my avian friend do most of the work until he stopped working, and before long we are at the Panic in the Disco Room, and I pull out the Great Ball of Fire and slap the shock enchantment on my hoe. Gotta ignite that spark after all. With the day saved, barring the 2-guard backup, I returned to the city in the sky and got my next task, this time getting armor from the Golden Country. Outside I get to contend once again with the Bone Zone, this time with even more guardians. At least with my shock enchantment I can deal more damage, and I'm not in quite the same amount of danger. Inside the dungeon proper, I'm very grateful my hoe is now effective against the ghost. I wish I could go into more detail about this dungeon dive, but when there's only one enemy type, it gets repetitive. At the very least, the items dropped by the Fallen Knights are worth a pretty penny, enough to fund a 20-minute excursion or something. The only other things of note that happened was that old Willie got a little chilly and went limp, and I had to backtrack to the final skeleton because Valimar is a little late to save the day for the required mech fights. Once the knight spent the knee, or checking out of the honeymoon, I could grab my armor and report back to start the next dungeon dive. Before then, I did have to recharge my stick, and it did cost a pretty penny. At least Alien Ruins are loaded with stuff to sell, plus Varla gems. I did get distracted on my way to the dungeon, another health gate opened up, and this dungeon is the second worst setup to plunge through, so I dipped on out. I also went hunting nearby. Another side quest since Oblivion is full of amazing quests. This one though isn't too standout. Just got half the cast from Brother Bear and ripped their teeth out, and while I was here I picked up the Atronach Tombstone, which will be amazing for Mankar. I also got yellow ticks, and I never ended up getting it cured. Oh well. Also at this point, enemies started to do classic over-exaggerated ragdolls. I turned in the quest, and all I got was a book. Not an audiobook, it was not a picture book, or a pop-up book, it was just a boring book with words, so it is useless to me. I take it and head to the nearby ruins. The goblins and the skeletons are trying to get it on with each other. I will leave it to your imagination what goes where and how deep. Eventually the zombies come out to play, only something a Falanu can enjoy. Before long I'm in the boss room with the mood crystal, which I take it off the pedestal without thinking of the consequences, and the king came out to play. I do a dance only a female mantis does to a male mantis before biting its head off, ask please to Breville to send soldiers to his death, and return to the CRT to begin the final few missions. Before going into the escort quest, I interrupted quality time to tell the Countess the world is about to end, and I go around preparing for the final battles, mostly selling everything I have been hoarding for a really good armor that fortifies strength at the cost of slowing me down. There is a very easy workaround to that, being able to strip at the drop of the hat. We parade through the streets like soldiers parading to their deaths, then started the big battle. The defense was pretty straightforward. I tried to get the kills as soon as the enemies leave the gates, as the data rushed in into the meat grinder. The process wasn't too strenuous. The only thing I have to worry about is pissing off the wrong person, leading to everyone killing each other after the battle like last time. With my one person backup, we are way too over-prepared, and the victory was at hand when the giant gate opened up, which I rushed in head first. Since I am on a time limit because of a big doomsday machine that will give Tamriel an experience similar to getting a prostate exam with a chainsaw, I don't waste too much time here, and I start rushing through. I'm an acrobat, so the rocks mean nothing. I think it takes me about a minute or so, and I'm inside the main tower. I'm careful with the blade traps, more careful than the enemies rushing me down, and I don't spend much time here. The only enemy I end up fighting is a Dremora Sigil Keeper, just to avoid picking locks. And with over 10 minutes to spare, the meat grinder gets the tip chopped off, and the day is saved. I don't waste a lot of time in prep work, and I rush right into Paradise on the dashboard lights. Paradise sure looks nice, the only thing missing are the harps, but at least I can supplement the music with pig squealing and grunts from the Daedra. I pry the gauntlets from the Guardian's hands, and I'm inside Skulldolphin. The Dremora in here are mostly Canfiers, and while I should be nervous with the physical reflect, I deal hardly any physical damage as it is, so 6% of 6 is I was never good at math, so let's just say inconsequential. I am invited into a hot tub for an exquisite experience, and I'm back to taking out the small fry. In the final portion of the inside, I'm freed from the bands, just in time for Flame Atronachs to come out to play. I am sure they are someone's fantasy, but for me, they're just hilarious ragdolls. Yeah, I noticed a lot of enemies in here like to exaggerate their deaths, just like me exaggerating events like saying I spent a solid 1 minute 9 seconds on the insides. Okay, it wasn't that quick, but I didn't spend long in here. I ignored the children and went right for Mankar. The fight with him was not too bad. The only part about the fight that sucks, besides his reflect aura that is always up, is that he runs around like a coward. I don't focus on the ads because they all fall down anyways, so I just focus on the main boss. Throughout the run, I do have potions hotkeys so I can heal at a moment's notice, something I do for most Bethesda games to be honest. The fight thankfully wasn't too bad, and before long the high elf is low elf, I got my wedding present from Spock back, and I sell the pendant to Martin for skooma money, so now time to wrap things up. Also, Joffrey is stuck on his death kneel. At least the final mission is super short. I watch the octave dab on the Emperor, and not long after the guards rush in and say all hell has broken loose. I have no idea what's happening during the fight, just me doing my best not to hit the wrong guy. Honestly, I hate big battles because of friendly fire. The easiest way to finish the game is to ignore everything and book it to the temple. I get a quick glance at the Dungeon Master and ignored him. Sean Bean is full of beans, and transforms into a dragon, gets a full course meal and devil meat, and I have successfully beat Oblivion Remastered with the hoe. That was something. I was promised diseases, but I don't think the hoe works as it's supposed to. Or I never noticed, or stat debuffs mean nothing to enemies, who knows. The weapon was something. It was okay in the early game when everything was level 1, but as soon as I started to level up, the weapon started to fall off rapidly. But much like Skyrim, any horrible weapon can be fixed with the usage of enchantments. If there's one thing I'm bummed out about in Oblivion, there aren't many options for joke weapons. Only other potential options are the weapons you get in the intro. At the very least, I am feeling more comfortable with Oblivion runs, so my next run will probably be a bit more spicy. And I have a couple more options of ways I could have a pleasant evening with myself. In Oblivion. Okay, my mind is extremely dirty, so time to wash it off. As for what's next, I have an interesting Fallout 4 run coming out that was very weird. So stay tuned to that. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe for more masochism, and any other ways to torture myself, leave them down below. This has been Orpheolus, and I'll see you on the next one.